everybody, Freddie B here. Predictions. Last week, my predictions almost came true. Last week, I predicted Oscar Piastri would win in Baku. I predicted Charles Leclerc would come in second, and I predicted Checo would have a great race and come in third. I didn't know that Carlos Sainz would ruin my predictions, but those are the way it goes. Not bad. That is 3 for 3, though, in the last 3 Grand Prix of Freddie B predicting your winner. I am close to becoming the F1 Whisperer, but I'm not there yet, and it's great. 2 laps from the end of the race, in what was a great move and great racing, Checo goes after Leclerc. Leclerc blocks, allows Carlos Sainz to come up. Carlos gets by Checo. Checo dives to the inside, tries to get by Carlos again. They're heading into turn 3. Carlos moved just slightly to the left. Their wheels touch, and Checo and Carlos both go into the wall. It is what they like to call in racing, as they say in NASCAR, Richard Petty style, one of them racing deals. But boy, was that an incredible race at Baku. I'll tell you, Leclerc had the pole. They had great racing. The first 20 laps were a great duel between he and Piastri. With Piastri, doing just the major dive going into turn 1 to finally get the lead. Leclerc said later, well, I thought I could get him back, but unfortunately tire degradation got in the way. But it allowed Piastri to rock. And Checo just stayed in third place. And the racing between first, second, and third throughout the race until you got to by lap 46, 47, 48, when Oscar kind of took off, was incredible. You didn't know if Checo, at any one point, Oscar could pull away or Leclerc could catch back up because his tires came back in, or Checo was going after Leclerc. It was classic, great Formula One racing, and it really was an incredible finish for them. One of the things I noticed was once Oscar pretty much had the race in hand, Leclerc, realizing that his tire degradation was to the point where he probably couldn't catch Oscar, I'm just wondering if strategically he didn't back off just a hair to allow. He didn't give Checo enough space to get by him. He was racing very good, but what he did allow was Carlos to come back up to try to challenge, to try to get that third place and get that podium, because it would have been super important for the manufacturers, obviously, for Ferrari to have a 2-3 finish. It would have been an incredible lift in points, because right now the manufacturers' championship is so tight, with McLaren getting first place and also an incredible run by Lando Norris for 5th. They have taken over the manufacturers' championship from Red Bull. So let me say this about the racing itself as a whole. Even though the race basically ended on the second to last lap, there was one incident that I'll mention, is that Nico Hülkenberg would have moved up to 9th place. So because of the wreck between Checo and Sainz, Hulk, who was in 11th, became 9th. As he passed the wreck, they still had not thrown the virtual safety car. So he is still going at slow speed, which is what you're supposed to do past the wreck. But both Hamilton and Ollie Behrman pass him. So he goes from 11th to 9th to 11th within a corner. And then they threw the virtual safety car, locking in the field. So I think that kind of sucked for Hulk. It was great for Oliver Behrman, though, because he got points for Haas, meaning that in the first 2 Grand Prix he's ever raced, he's the first one to ever do this as a rookie. He's gotten points in both races, and then he's done it for 2 separate teams, which is pretty amazing, which is kind of cool. So good on you, Ollie Behrman, thinking quickly. I feel bad for Hülkenberg. So George Russell sneaks into 3rd place as a result of the accident. He's running along in 5th. He's 5 seconds behind everybody, but several seconds ahead of Lando Norris. So he really had no nobody attacking him or anything at that point. He's just cruising along, and I think he was ready to accept, no problem, a decent points-paying day of 5th place, and then all of a sudden he's thrust onto the podium, which has got to be great for him. So there you have it, and then Norris did a great job. He starts P15 because of a late yellow in P2. And because of the late yellow in P2, he couldn't get his quick lap in, or he probably would have gone into P3. He probably would have been a threat for the pole. But even he said those are the breaks of the game, and that's why you want to get a fast lap in early in qualifying, so if something happens, you still have a lap to fall back on. Unfortunately, his early fast lap, as the track evolved, wasn't quick enough. So he started P15, but he did come all the way back up to P5. So for Lando Norris, proven that his racecraft, his skills are getting better and better. And McLaren finishing 1st and 5th. My question is their racecraft getting better? Or is that car becoming so dominant, not unlike Red Bull, that it's hiding some strategic blunders they're still making? Red Bull had the same issue because we now know that Red Bull's car is not the fastest car on the grid, might not even be the 2nd fastest. They have some issues, and the underlying issues were always covered up by Helmut Marko screaming that Checo sucked. And Checo doesn't suck. And finally Christian Horner comes out and goes, no, it's the car. Checo's been right. And Max has been right the last several races when he says the car isn't right. And it finally comes to fruition. It's just that Max's superior driving skill, which he's still probably the fastest and best driver out there currently, although there's some very good drivers out there. I mean, they're all really good. Has been covering up the ills of Red Bull. So my question to Red Bull is, I think Checo's probably safe now, but is Helmut Marko still going to sit there and try to get rid of Checo and bring in Leon Lawson? We just don't know. Be an interesting next several races. But I think Checo's going to have a really good Singapore also. So with Lando finishing 5th, Max finishes 6th, and then you've got Alonso. Great, good race for Aston Martin. I think that whole team's on a high now that Adrian Newey is heading their way next year. I don't think you'll see Alonso screaming and yelling too much in the future because he knows relief is on the way. Then you have then you have a resurgent Alex Albon and a resurgent Williams, let's say. Alex Albon's always been good. Williams hasn't. It's a Williams type track, Azerbaijan, because they get the long straights, and Williams very quick car in a straight line, not unlike Haas was last year, just couldn't corner well. But he did great, and Colapinto did great too. Franco Colapinto, in his 2nd race, he scored points. So that's 10 points for Williams, which is a completely excellent result there. And then you had Hamilton in 9th, again, Ollie Berman 10th with an important point, and that rounds out your top 10. So a really, really, really interesting and good Baku Grand Prix. Now, Daniel Ricciardo, we're probably got to say goodbye to. I think Daniel Ricciardo is come to the conclusion that he is not going to be the 4th RB or Red Bull or V-Carb driver. It's probably going to be Liam Lawson, and he's maybe ready for Happy Trails. It's possible, since he was a huge and is a huge Dale Earnhardt fan. That's why he drives the number 3 on his car, is because he was a huge fan of Dale Earnhardt. That he may want to put his hand into the NASCAR bucket, and if he does put his hand into NASCAR, I will again become a fan of NASCAR, because I am a fan of Daniel Ricciardo. I think he is an extremely talented driver. I don't think anybody would dispute me. In terms of a marketing talent and in terms of fan recognition, he's great, but it's just come to the point where maybe his time in F1 is over. And he can look back next year, if he leaves, on his F1 career, and it was a successful career. He may have made a couple of mistakes on which teams he picked, but outside of that, for what he had and what he had to work with, Daniel Ricciardo has had a very good career in F1, a career that many an F1 driver would be happy to retire and have had. So maybe he goes to NASCAR next year. Be interesting to see if maybe Red Bull opens up their sponsorship in NASCAR a little bigger and sponsors Daniel Ricciardo in a stock car. Would be fun. It sure would be fun to watch him at Sonoma and also at Watkins Glen do some road racing. It might be good once he gets used to the fact that the car he's driving is 3 times heavier than the cars that he is used to. So there is a huge learning curve in driving those big cars. But he is from Australia, home of the Supercar Series, so he should be quite okay. And as to the rookies in F1, with Franco Colapinto getting points and doing well in his first 2 races, Oliver Behrman showing that he has some racing skills also, I think that the youth movement in Formula One is well underway. So it's very possible to have 3, 4, maybe even 5 rookies on the grid for 2025. Although I'm still not discounting Stake Sauber Audi going after and signing Valtteri Bottas as their second driver along with Hulkenberg. I think that might be the way to go because you're in a team that you're trying to develop the team. So I think that becomes kind of important. So who are my top 4 teams? Well, let's rank them as they go. I think McLaren now becomes number 1. They have 2 number 1 drivers in their stake. They've got Oscar and perhaps even overtaking Norris as their number 1 driver. But Norris is still pretty good. Has, again, McLaren mastered the art of racing? In other words, they can certainly go fast. They got that. Do they know how to race and do they know how to win? I think they know how to race. I think Oscar's move past Leclerc was brilliant. And they know how to win. They're getting better at knowing how to win. So that might be them getting very steep on the learning curve in terms of race strategy and the mastery there, as opposed to the car dominance covering up their lack of racecraft. Number 2, Ferrari. Again, a team that's on the rise. They admitted that their last upgrades didn't work, but the new upgrades that they put on the last several races have done great. I think you're going to see Ferrari do very well at Singapore. It is a racetrack that's very similar to Baku, except it doesn't have the long straights. It's got lots of corners where Leclerc had mentioned he could catch Piastri in the corners. He just couldn't hold them on the straights. So it'll be an interesting race between the McLarens and the Ferraris coming up this week in Singapore. They certainly have a driver lineup that is to get podiums. Actually, Carlos Sainz won last year's race at Singapore, so he's got to be a favorite there. Finally, Red Bull's 3rd, with finally admitting that there's probably some problem on the car. It's the car, not the driver right now. Max is still one of the best drivers in the world. Again, nobody listened to him telling everybody there was something wrong with the car. They just thought it was Max being Max, which is interesting because it's kind of like Max does have a little bit of Chicken Little syndrome in that the sky is always falling if the car is falling off. And usually it's not the car. But this time it is the car, and this time Chicken Little was right. So you could use that or the boy who called Wolf analogy with Max. So maybe Max needs to better manage his comments so that he is better taken seriously. And then finally Mercedes, this team will leap forward. They did have a problem with their car. Hamilton had issues. They had so many issues that they changed the power unit they may not have had to change, and Hamilton started from the pit lane. But they've got that sorted out, and I think you'll see them do pretty well coming into Singapore. So let's talk about Singapore. It's one of my favorite races of the year. Why? It's under the lights, which is great. It's a beautiful country, Singapore. It's one of my bucket list items. I definitely got to go there. I think it's because I watch Crazy Rich Asians. I don't know. But there's certainly some beautiful women over there, which is great. It's also, I think, a crown jewel. Remember, it was the first race to go under the lights in 2008. And that whole town sparkles at night. The only thing that kind of sucks about it it's just unbearably hot. But when you're virtually on the equator, it's going to be unbearably hot. So maybe a cold front moves through. Now, there's a possibility of rain, according to some forecasts for this race. It's a nice street circuit. It's 4.94 kilometers, which is 3.06 miles. It has 19 turns. This year, 4 DRS zones as opposed to 3 from last year. And last year, Carlos came in first, followed by Lando Norris and then Lewis Hamilton, with Charles Leclerc, fourth, and Max came in fifth. So should be and it was great racing throughout the event last year, and it should be the same this year. So Freddie B's predictions for Singapore. And if you watched my last race, you know that my Oscar Piastri prediction kind of came out of left field as I was talking. And here's what I think is going to happen this year. I think Norris is going to bounce back, and Norris is going to get first. But Ferrari is going to be really, really tight. And it's going to be Sainz, and then Leclerc third, and then maybe Max, Oscar, Hamilton, Perez, and Russell. Maybe with Alonso in there too. So those are what I think. So again, Norris first, Carlos Sainz second, Leclerc third. So McLaren and Ferrari having a great race in Singapore. I hope they come true. Hey, thank you so much for making it this far. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. If you don't like what you see, please subscribe. It helps. Give me a like button and hit that bell for notifications on everything. I also do NFL Pathetic Pics. Those will be up soon. I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great time in Singapore. And for now, it's Freddie B. Ta-ta for now.